The Congress of Colombia installs the new legislative cycle for the 2022-2026 term. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu ordered troops to step up efforts to destroy Ukrainian drones located in the border with Russia. The World Health Organization confirmed the first 2 cases of the highly infectious Marburg virus, a disease in Ghana. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On Wednesday, the Congress of Colombia installs the new legislative cycle for the 2022-2026 term. The new Congress of Colombia, with a majority of the historical pact coalition in both chambers, will be installed this Wednesday in an official ceremony in the Elliptical Hall, headed by the President Iván Duque on a day that coincides with the celebration of the 212th anniversary of the Cry of Independence. 108 senators and 187 representatives to the chamber will be installed for this period, while around 181 legislators will take part in the Congress for the first time after the victory of the historic pact on March 13th. According to the new president of the Congress, Roy Barreras, the priorities for this new legislative stage are the tax reform, as well as the revision of the general budget for the nation for 2023. Newly appointed representatives for the Colombian Congress vowed to work to pacify a 5-decades-long conflict between the military and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia People's Army, some of which are still fighting in some parts of the rural Colombia. For the first time, a group of 16 lawmakers were appointed as special representatives for the victims in the areas that have been affected the most. The new congressional seats were created as part of the peace agreements signed in 2016 between the government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces. Since then, multiple groups have split from the main organizations to continue their fight. President-elect Gustavo Petro will take office on August 7th with a majority in Congress that is expected to support the peace process that has been subject to a debate and reforms for the past 6 years. In Panama, past midnight, the alliances that maintain the protest against the high cost of living and corruption held an emergency meeting, and they have conditioned the continuation of the dialogue to the end of the repression exercised by the law enforcement against the native populations of Veraguas. The platform of the 3 alliances has approved an 8-point agenda which to be submitted to the government. They maintain the importance and the interest in the dialogue, which is why they have decided to advance in the topics they wish to discuss with the administration. The meeting concluded in the early hours of this Wednesday morning, but they say they will be returning to the Catholic Center Cristo Sembrador in Penome at 10 a.m. local time to resume the dialogue table, provided there with no more repression against the indigenous peoples in Veraguas who have been brutally harassed by riot squads. On Tuesday, Peruvian President Pedro Castillo has a very busy day. In less than 24 hours, he celebrated his first years in office, dismissed his 6th Interior Minister, and swore in his successor. As of Tuesday night, Willy Huerta Olivas is the new Interior Minister of Peru. His predecessor, Mariano González, lasted only 2 weeks on the job. González had been the minister under the previous administration of Pedro Pablo Kuczynski from 2016 to 2018. Castillo has not explained the reasons why, but he thanked the outgoing minister and the opposition. The media has insinuated that González was promoting investigations on people close to the president and even on the president himself. The new Interior Minister, Huerta Olivas, is an expert in police science and was the head of the investigative team of the Anti-Corruption Directorate of the Prosecutor's Office. In Haiti, a nation besieged by the criminal gangs, violence, human rights organizations have confirmed that in less than 7 days, more than 4,000 people have fled from a commune in Port-au-Prince, the capital of the country. United Nations has raised all alarms, and its local representatives said that the capital is in the hands of criminal organizations. The turf war, which was worsened over the last 3 weeks, has already left more than 950 people dead. The rates of injuries and the kidnappings resulting from this turf war have shot up exponentially, according to the representatives of the United Nations in Haiti. This Tuesday, the Center for Analysis and the Research of Human Rights of the country included the data on displaced people. According to the organization, since July 7th, 4,000 people have fled their homes in Cité-Soleil, the Sun City, one of the most impoverished neighborhoods in the nation's capital. Experts said the population is being exploited for political and economic interests in view of the upcoming elections, while they are left on their own to face this second war of criminal groups in complete absence of government intervention. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. People in Germany had the hottest day this year, as the highest temperature hit 40 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country. According to data released by the country's meteorological authorities on Wednesday, most regions of the country were scorched by a temperature of above 35 degrees Celsius. In the southwestern and the western parts of the country, temperatures soared to 40 degrees Celsius. It was the second time that heat wave affected Germany since mid-June. As the situation worsened, experts warned about the risk of heat wave-triggered wildfires. As a result, the government authorities upgraded the wildfire alert to the highest level for most of its forests. And a massive wildfire broke out in the region of Penteli in northern Athens on Wednesday, forcing hundreds to evacuate and leaving 3 injured. Local media reported the fire broke out after sunset and then spread to northeastern suburbs of Athens. 3 people injured in the fire, 2 of them suffered burns and 1 suffered breathing difficulties due to smoke inhalation. They were all taken to hospital for treatment. More than 600 people have been evacuated so far, as many homes have been destroyed and roads closed. In Greece, hundreds of residents were evacuated from their homes as a wildfire threatened mountainside suburbs northeast of Athens. Firefighters battled through the night, struggling to contain the blaze, intensified by the strong gusts of wind. Officials said 15 planes and 9 helicopters were involved in the firefighting effort on the slopes of Mount Penteli, 25 kilometers northeast of Athens. Police officers and firefighters carried elderly residents out of their homes to safety as the flames approached. Local officials said homes had been burned or damaged, but there were no reports of injuries. Greece has been spared by the heat wave conditions currently plaguing countries in Western Europe, but longer-term temperature rises have increased in overall risk of forest fires. Now we move on to other topics. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu ordered the troops to step up efforts to destroy Ukrainian drones located in the border with Russia. The head of the Russian defense visited the Zapad battalion of the armed forces deployed in the west of Russia and part of the military operation in Ukraine. After meeting with the unit's commander, Lieutenant General Andrei Sychevoy, and being briefed of the current situation, Shoigu gave instructions to suppress the pro-Nazi nationalists, the shelling against the free sites. On his third visit to the field where the Russian troops are deployed, the minister urged commanders to further increase the efficiency of the operation. The European Union proposed that the bloc cut its natural gas consumption by 15% over the next 8 months in a plan that will affect all households. producers and the industry. The goal is embedded in regulation, accompanying demand reduction guidelines for governments amid growing concern that Russia will cut the gas exports to the region after being hit with sanctions following its special military operation in Ukraine. The measure put forward by the European Commission includes a mandatory trigger if the situation worsens and voluntarily curbs are insufficient. Under its Safe Gas for a Safe Winter plan, the Commission recommended steps that included reducing heating and cooling, switching to other fuels, and the market-based measures. And the final two candidates to become the UK Prime Minister were elected Wednesday, with Foreign Secretary Liz Truss battling it out with frontrunner Rishi Sunak. Sunak won the fifth and final voting round of Tory MPs with a resounding 137 votes, while second-place Truss won the support of 113 MPs. Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt was knocked out of the race after coming in third with 105 votes. The 42-year-old British Indian former Chancellor, who has topped every voting round so far, also added 19 votes to this Tuesday's tally of 118 and comfortably crossed the 120 MPs mark, seen as the threshold to confirm a place in the final showdown. Sunak and Truss are now set for their first head-on clash in a live televised debate scheduled for Monday. Earlier, outgoing Prime Minister Johnson used his last Prime Minister's questions in the House of Commons to bid farewell to the top job, saying, "Hasta la vista, baby." The United Kingdom's Consumer Price Index rose by 9.4% in the 12 months to June, hitting a 40-year high amid rising prices for motor fuel and food. On a monthly basis, the country's CPI rose by 0.8% in June 2022, compared with a rise of 0.5% in June 2021, according to the Office of National Statistics. The increase in annual inflation was driven by rising fuel and food prices, and these were slightly offset by falling second-hand car prices. The annual increase for the transport was 15.2% in June 2022, compared with a minus 1.5% in June 2020, during the first COVID-19 lockdown. Food and non-alcoholic beverage prices have risen by 9.8% in the year to June 2022, the highest rate since March 2009. The Bank of England forecasted the inflation to rise above 11% in October, alongside a widely anticipated huge increase in the energy price cap. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. The World Health Organization confirmed the first two cases of the highly infectious Marburg virus disease in Ghana. The announcement came after two unrelated patients from the southern Ashanti region of Ghana, both of whom later died, tested positive for the virus. The patients had shown symptoms including diarrhea, fever, nausea, and vomiting. The international organization also added that more than 90 contacts are being monitored. Marburg is a highly infectious viral hemorrhagic fever in the same family as Ebola virus disease and has a fatality ratio of up to 88%. The illness begins abruptly with high fever, severe headache, and malaise. On Wednesday, United Nations officials offered a report on human rights violations carried out by the Taliban in Afghanistan since the insurgents' takeover in August 2021. The Taliban have routinely denied accusation of rights abuses since overthrowing the previous Western-backed government, but the UNAMER report listed multiple accounts, among them 160 allegations of extrajudicial killings, 56 incidents of torture and ill treatment, and more than 170 arbitrary arbitrary arrests and detentions against former government officials and national security force members since August. It also documented more than 200 instances of cruel, inhuman, or degrading punishments and more than 100 cases of excessive use of force.
Shortly after the takeover in mid-August 2021, the de facto authorities announced a general amnesty, providing for former government officials and ANDSF. The amnesty has not, however, been consistently upheld. UNAMA has recorded to date 160 extrajudicial killings, 178 arrests and detentions of both former ANDSF and government officials carried out by the de facto authorities.
In the final statement of the trilateral summit held in Tehran of the presidents of Iran, Russia and Turkey condemned the continued Israeli attacks against Syria and considered them a violation of international law. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan held a trilateral summit on Tuesday in Tehran, where they discussed ways to solve the crisis in Syria, their rejection of terrorism, and analyze ways to accelerate the return of Syrian refugees to their country. The three countries denounced the increasing activities of terrorist groups and their affiliates under different names in different regions of Syria. The text further expressed rejection of the unilateral sanctions imposed on Damascus, which contradict international laws and the human rights. It called on the world community to provide adequate humanitarian aid to the Syrian refugees for their return to their lands. Russia's President Vladimir Putin held a bilateral meeting with his Iranian counterpart Ebrahim Raisi ahead of a three-way summit on Syria. Raisi and Putin discussed means of developing relations in various fields, including energy, transit, and the trade exchanges, as well as regional development. Putin urged strengthening cooperation in the fields of international security and said that a significant contribution is made to the solution of the Syrian crisis. For his part, Raisi wished Putin's visit to Iran to be a turning point in the development of relations between the two countries, as well as regional and international cooperation, adding that after the meetings in Moscow and Ashgabat, the process of cooperation between the two countries is growing. Russian President Vladimir Putin thanked the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan for mediating talks in the export of grain from Ukraine, saying there was some progress. In this regard, Putin thanked Erdogan for his efforts to mediate in order to provide a Turkish platform for negotiations on food issues and to arrange the departure of ships with grain from ports across the Black Sea. For his part, the Turkish president commented to Putin on the positive and constructive position taken by the delegation of the Eurasian nation in the negotiations of the export of Ukrainian grain. At Tuesday's meeting, Putin and Erdogan also discussed ways for the settlement of the situation in Syria, the issue of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and the bilateral agenda on the sidelines of the Astana summit in Tehran.
I want to thank you for your mediation efforts and for providing a platform for negotiations on food problems and grain export. With your mediation, we have moved forward. Not all issues have yet been resolved, but the fact that there is movement is already good.
So we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, as always, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.